Hello everyone, I'm Meghna Manoj Nair. Today we'll be looking into CPU scheduling algorithms in operating systems. These are the 5 major topics we will be covering today. I guess it's more than time that we actually dive into these topics, get a better view and visualization of what they mean and what they actually do. So let's go. Before we get into the technicalities, let's just familiarize ourselves with a few basic terms. Firstly, what is an operating system? So operating system is actually a program which after being, loaded into the computer with the help of a boot program or a boot loader, it will basically take care of all the other application and programs within a computer. So it basically provides an interface for other applications and programs to work. And what about a CPU? What is a central processing unit? So central processing unit, it is often called as a main processor or even just a processor. It's actually the electronic components which are present within the computer, and they are responsible for executing the arithmetical and logical instructions, and they also control the different components which are present within the system and coordinate within them. Another important point to be noted in the CPU is that it's actually the primary component of the computer, and it will run the OS, it will run the applications. It is the one which constantly receives input from the user. It will execute the instructions and process the data and create an output. And this CPU will basically store the output in an application or in the memory, or it will display it on the screen. So now what is a scheduler? So in computing, scheduler is basically the technique or the methodology through which work or a particular task or an execution is going to be assigned to a resource or a component which will basically handle the execution of that particular task. And when it comes to CPU scheduler is actually those computational components present inside the CPU which would execute CPU scheduling. Now, CPU scheduling is nothing but a process of basically determining which process would have the authority or the rights to own the CPU for execution while all other processes are on hold. So CPU scheduling, now this is the main and primary job of the CPU, that is to make sure that whenever the CPU remains idle, the operating system, it will at least select one of the processes which are available in the ready queue. The ready queue basically is a queue which follows the first in first out technique, and it consists of all the processes which are ready for execution. Now the selection process by the CPU scheduler will be carried out based on the algorithm it is following, because there are many CPU scheduling algorithms which we will be looking into further. So it will select one of the processes in the memory which are ready for execution, and then it will execute it. So now let's move on to the different types of CPU scheduling. There are 2 types. We have preemptive scheduling and non-preemptive scheduling. So when it comes to preemptive scheduling, tasks are basically assigned based on their priorities. So sometimes we will have to run tasks which have a higher priority even though a lower priority might be currently in execution. So we will keep the lower priority aside and we will go on with the higher priority execution. That is what the CPU will do. And the lower priority task will be held or will be kept on hold, and it will resume after the higher priority task will finish its execution. This is actually something which we see in our daily life also. When we are traveling by any public mode of transport like through train or bus or metro, we often see that we need to give priority to the old people or pregnant women, because they deserve to have a seat more than all the other youngsters, right? So here we give them based on their priority. So this is one real life example of preemptive scheduling. In non-preemptive scheduling, the CPU will be allocated to one specific process, and this process will keep the CPU busy. Until and unless that process has finished, the CPU will not be able to deviate into any other mode of process unless it is some context switching or a normal termination process. And this is kind of like the only method that can be used for the different hardware platforms, because it doesn't really need any special hardware like an interval timer or anything which the preemptive scheduling would do. And non-preemptive scheduling also has a real life example. For example, when a teacher or a professor is not able to come to a particular class, what he or she would do is they would assign the students with a particular assignment or a task which they would have to upload at the end of the class. So they'll make sure that the students are busy until the end of the class. Only then they can go out and move around as long as the teacher doesn't come. Now, when do we consider a scheduling technique to be preemptive or non-preemptive? Now, there are 4 parameters which we usually consider for a scheduling technique to be preemptive or non-preemptive. If a particular process is switching from the running state to the waiting state, or if a process has finished its execution and it is being terminated normally, then if these 2 conditions hold, the technique or the scheduling technique is said to be non-preemptive. Along with these 2 techniques, if a specific process is switching from the running state to the ready state or from the waiting state to the ready state, then in these cases, the scheduling techniques are said to be preemptive. So these are the 4 parameters which the CPU scheduler would look into to characterize them as preemptive or non-preemptive scheduling. Moving on to our next topic, that is important CPU scheduling terms. So firstly, we have burst time or the execution time. So this is very often also called as the running time. It's basically the time which is required by a particular process to complete its execution successfully. Arrival time. Now this is the time when a process basically enters a ready state. Ready state as in when the process is ready for execution. Then comes finish time. So finish time is the time at which a process has completed and terminated successfully and it has exited the system. Now, multi-programming, it's basically a number of programs or multiple programs which can be present in the memory simultaneously in different states. It can be in the waiting state or in the ready state whatsoever. Now, jobs. Jobs is basically another type of program which doesn't really require any sort of user interaction or user intervention. User is nothing but another program which would have some kind of user interaction or interfacing required. Now, process, it is basically the reference which is used for the combined terms of both jobs and users. And CPU input-output burst cycle. So, this is basically the term which characterizes the process execution, and it helps in alternating or toggling between the CPU and the input-output activity. And usually, the CPU times are much shorter when compared to the time which is dedicated for the input-output components. Time for a very quick, cool little fact. You know, the very first electronic computer, ENIAC, it actually weighed more than 27 tons and it took up around 1,800 square feet of space. So that is extremely huge when compared to the very thin, sleek and small little PCs, laptops and computers we have today. And unlike now where we just have to press a key to execute a particular application or a program, those days people had to literally switch on and off and toggle between the different switches in order to execute even a small program or to execute a process. So, you know, it's very interesting to actually see how humans have evolved from such a technological point of view. Now, there is something called as a CPU scheduling criteria. And there are different components which can actually help in maximizing the efforts of a CPU and certain things which we need to minimize in order to make sure that the CPU isn't idle and gives a very good result. Now, CPU utilization and throughput on maximizing would actually help in an efficient CPU scheduling mechanism. Now, what is CPU utilization? So, CPU utilization is actually the major task in which the operating system would have to ensure that the CPU remains as busy as possible and it doesn't stay idle for any point of time, and this can have a range from 0 to 100%. And then comes the throughput. So throughput is nothing but the total number of processes which are executing within a unit time, and that is the throughput. So whenever the CPU is busy executing any given process or an instruction, at that time work is being done, and the amount of work which is being completed in this unit time is called throughput. So for a CPU scheduling to be efficient, the CPU utilization and the throughput needs to be at its maximum. So these two components need to be maximized. Waiting time. Now, waiting time is actually the specific amount of time which a process requires to wait for in the ready queue before the CPU takes it for execution. Response time is the amount of time in which the request had been submitted to the CPU, and until from that time to the time wherein the first response is being produced. So the time between the request to the CPU and the response from the CPU to and from the process is called the response time. And the turnaround time is the amount of time which is required for executing a specific process. So the difference from the turnaround time and the throughput is that in turnaround time, it is basically calculated by the time which is spent in waiting to get into the memory, then the time which is being spent waiting in the queue, and the time which is taken for execution. So this period between the time of process submission until this execution time is called as the turnaround time. So the waiting time, response time and turnaround time, these three components need to be minimized to ensure that CPU scheduling and the CPU work is done in an efficient manner. One last term which I would like to introduce to you before moving into the CPU scheduling algorithms is the dispatcher. Now, what is a dispatcher? It is actually a module which is providing all sorts of control of the CPU to a given process. Now, this dispatcher should actually be pretty fast, quick and prompt so that it can run on every given context switch. And this dispatch latency or the lag is actually the amount of time which is needed by the CPU scheduler to stop one process and then start the other. So basically, to switch from one process to the other, the time which is required for that is called the dispatch latency. Now, there are three main functions which are actually performed by the dispatcher. First one is context switching. Now, context switching is nothing but storing the context or the state of a particular process which was currently in execution so that it can be reloaded as and when required, and the execution can be resumed from the very same point where it had been left off earlier. And this is one of the features of a multitasking operating system. The second main function of a dispatcher is basically to switch from the system or the kernel mode to the user mode. And the third function is moving to the correct location in the newly loaded program. That is also a task which is to be done by the dispatcher. So these are the three things which are done by the dispatcher. Now let's move on to the most important topic of today, which is the scheduling algorithms. We'll be looking at 6 of them. So the first one is first come, first serve. So this is actually one of the easiest and simplest CPU scheduling algorithms. So as the name suggests, the process which requests for the CPU the first will be allocated the CPU the first, and all of the other processes or all of the subsequent processes would be managed and dealt with using a FIFO queue. That's a first in first out queue. Now, as each process basically enters this ready queue, the process control block, it will be linked with the tail of the queue, that is the end of the queue. So whenever a CPU basically becomes free, it will be assigned to the process which comes at the beginning of the queue. So this is how it keeps moving. And there are some characteristics for FCFS, that is, it offers both non-preemptive as well as preemptive scheduling algorithms. And always the jobs are going to be executed on a first come first serve basis. So whichever process which demands the CPU the first will be allocated the CPU at that time itself, while all the subsequent or following processes would be managed or handled in a ready queue, and then they will follow the FIFO technique. That is, the first one which is present in the queue will be allotted the CPU, followed by the second, then the third, and so on. And this is quite easy to implement and to use, but this is not a very efficient algorithm because the performance is poor. It's not highly efficient and improvised, and this is mainly because of the general or the average waiting time. It is very high, and we have already seen that the waiting time must be minimized. So for that reason, FCFS is not a very preferable scheduling algorithm, even though it is quite simple and easy. The second scheduling algorithm is basically shortest remaining time, or the SRT algorithm, and it's very often called as the SJF, or the shortest job first preemptive scheduling algorithm. In this methodology, what happens is that the process will be allocated to a particular task which is closest to its completion. So whichever process is requiring very less amount of time to near its completion state, they will be allocated the CPU or the process the first. And this method basically helps in preventing any newer or novel ready state process from holding the completion of an older process. So even if a new ready state process occurs, it will ensure that the older processes which are closer to completion would be executed first. Now, it also has a few interesting characteristics. SRT is basically one of those methods which is usually applied in the batch environments, wherein the short jobs are required to be given preferences. So whichever job is much shorter, they will be given a higher priority. But this is not a very ideal technique when it comes to implementing it in a shared or a distributed system, where the required time for the CPU is, unknown, or it is not fixed. So in that cases, this is not highly preferable, and usually the SRT associates each process with the length of its next CPU burst, so that the operating system, which makes use of these lengths, they will be helped to schedule the process with the shortest possible time. So that is our second scheduling algorithm, which is shortest remaining time. Our third algorithm is priority scheduling. Now, priority scheduling is also a method of scheduling process which is completely based on priority. So the scheduler will basically select a particular task or a process for execution as per the priority. So if a particular task has higher priority than that of the other, the higher priority task will be executed first. And if there are more than one tasks with the same priority, then jobs or tasks with equal priorities would be carried out either in a round robin fashion or on the basis of first come first serve. And these priority scheduling techniques or the priority can actually be decided completely based on the memory requirements, the time requirements and constraints, and many other parameters. So this is all about priority scheduling. The fourth scheduling algorithm is round robin scheduling. So round robin scheduling is one of the oldest yet the simplest scheduling algorithms, and the name of this algorithm itself comes from the round robin principle. So this principle actually states that each person or each component in a particular process would get an equal share of something in turn. And this scheduling technique is mainly used in multitasking and multi-programming, and it will actually help in starvation-free execution of processes. So if a particular process has a very low priority, and if there are many high priority processes coming before that, then there are all chances that the low priority process or task might be starved and it might not be executed. But this round robin scheduling will ensure that the process is starvation free. Now, some characteristics of round robin scheduling are that round robin scheduling is actually a hybrid model and it is clock driven. So the time slice, that is basically the time which is assigned for a specific task to be processed, would be very minimal in this case. But again, it is also dependent on the process which is in execution. And round robin scheduling is a real-time system. It will actually be responding to the event within a specific time limit. Our fifth scheduling algorithm is shortest job first, or the SJF algorithm. This algorithm is basically the technique through which the process which has got the shortest execution time would be selected the very first for execution. Now, this can be implemented through a preemptive or a non-preemptive approach, and this algorithm is quite unique because it helps in reducing the average waiting time for all the processes which are awaiting execution, that is, they are in the ready state. Now, it has some really unique characteristics. So firstly, the SJF algorithm, it is associated with each job as a unit of time required for completing. In this method, when the CPU is available, the next process or the job which has the shortest or the least amount of time required for completion will be executed the next. And this algorithm is very useful when it comes to batch type processing, wherein waiting for jobs or processes to complete is not very critical, but the ones which have shorter time is the one which is prioritized, and it actually helps in improvising on the job output by offering shorter jobs and smaller jobs which could be executed first, and they would definitely be having the shorter turnaround time. So this is the SJF algorithm. Moving on to the last and the sixth algorithm for our session today, it is the multiple level queues scheduling algorithm. Now, this algorithm actually separates the ready queue into several other sub-queues, and the process is basically assigned to a queue based on the specific property of that process, and this property can either be the priority, the size of the memory, the time, etc. But this is not a very independent scheduling algorithm because it actually needs the help and is dependent on the other types of algorithms we have discussed in order to schedule the jobs. Now, some of the important characteristics of multiple level queues scheduling algorithm is that it needs to maintain many queues or multiple sub queues for the processes which have similar characteristics, and each and every queue can have its own separate scheduling algorithms, making this particular algorithm dependent on other algorithms, and definitely priorities will also be given for each queue. Now, I have actually been talking about so many different scheduling algorithms and their details, but why exactly do we need, or why exactly does the CPU require a scheduling algorithm? So, there are a few important reasons as to why a CPU adopts scheduling algorithms. They are as follows. So, first is the CPU actually needs these scheduling processes and algorithms to improvise on its efficiency, to make sure that it is capable of handling all the different processes in a very efficient and systematic manner. The second reason is it will actually help the CPU to allocate the different resources and computing components among the different competing processes in a very orderly fashion. The third one is maximum utilization of CPU can be easily obtained with multi-programming and scheduled processes, and maximum utilization is definitely a very important criteria for making sure that the CPU works efficiently. And the last reason is the processes which are to be executed, they will always be stacked in a ready queue when we make use of scheduling algorithms. So the CPU can just look into the ready queue and take the process based on the algorithm which it is following. So these are the main reasons as to why we, or the CPU, requires a scheduling algorithm for executing the different processes. Now this can actually be applied in our daily life also. We as students, when we actually follow a very fixed and routine timetable or a schedule for studying, we are able to score good marks for our exams, right? And we are able to understand the concepts well, and we'll be studying and revamping our concepts on a regular basis. But if we do it in a very scattered manner, definitely we will not be able to get our maximum output or the best marks for our exam. So the very same thing applies for CPU as well. With that, we come to the very end of this session. Hope you all have gotten a very good idea about the CPU scheduling mechanisms and what CPU scheduling is all about, and the different algorithms which a CPU incorporates in order to schedule the processes. Hope it was informative, and hope that you all got a clear idea. So thank you. Until next time, it's me, Meghna Manoj Nair, signing off.